get started. We have finished First Kings, and now we're going to dig into Second Kings. So we'll start there. We are in Second Kings chapter 1. And the story goes on. As we mentioned last week, Kings was originally one book. And then, as you know, our Old Testament matches the Hebrew Scriptures in content, but not in division. We've discussed that multiple times as we've looked at Old Testament books and where they're placed at in the organized Hebrew Scripture versus our organized Scripture. They match, but they are divided differently. But Kings is one book in Hebrew. And then here in the English, we maintained the Greek division. So we have 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. They were titled differently in Greek, but we kept the Hebrew names and we kept the Greek division. But that's just the way that it rolls. So we are in 2nd Kings, and we are in chapter 1. Excuse me. So 2 Kings 1, verse 1. Then Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab, and Ahaziah fell down through a lattice in his upper chamber that was in Samaria and was sick, and sent messengers and said unto them, Go, inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover of this disease. But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say unto them, Is it not because there is a God in Israel that you go up to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Now therefore, thus saith the Lord, Thou shalt not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. And Elijah departed. And when the messengers turned back unto him, he said unto them, Why are you now turned back? And they said unto him, There came a man up to meet us, and said unto us, Go, turn again unto the king that sent you, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that thou sendest to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore thou shalt not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. And he said unto them, What manner of man was he which came up to meet you, and told you these words? And they answered him, He was an hairy man, and girt with the girdle of leather about his loins. And he said, It is Elijah the Tishbite. Then the king sent unto him a captain of 50 with his 50, and he went up to him, and behold, he sat on the top of a hill. And he spake unto him, Thou man of God, the king hath said, Come down. And Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, If I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven, and consume thee and thy 50. And there came down fire from heaven, and consumed him and his 50. Again also he sent unto him another captain of 50 with his 50. And he answered and said unto him, O man of God, thus hath the king said, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said unto him, If I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. And he sent again a captain of the third 50 with his 50. And the third captain of 50 went up and came and fell on his knees before Elijah and besought him and said unto him, O man of God, I pray thee, let my life and the life of these 50 thy servants be precious in thy sight. Behold, there came fire down from heaven and burned up the two captains of the former 50s with their 50s. Therefore let my life now be precious in thy sight. And the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah, Go down with him, be not afraid of him. And he arose and went down with him unto the king. And he said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Forasmuch as thou hast sent messengers to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, is it not because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word? Therefore thou shalt not come down off that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. So he died, according to the word of the Lord, which Elijah had spoken. And Jehoram reigned in his stead in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, because he had no son. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaziah, which he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Israel? All right. We just went ahead and read the whole chapter, okay? Because there's just not good breaks, and sometimes we find that, and that's okay. So, we have dug in. Remember last week we got the introductory statement of Ahaziah, that Ahab died, and Ahaziah, his son, began to reign, right? And he was a wicked king. He did the same things that his father done. He continued the wicked legacy of Ahab. He pursued the worship of Baal. He continued with the sin of what was going on in Jeroboam. There we go. The name just completely left me for a second. But he continued in that as well. So these things are going on. And during his reign, Moab decides to rebel against Israel. And so that's kind of going on in the background. Now, he is on the roof of his palace, most likely, that upper chamber. And they're not uncommon to have a structure on top of the roof. Obviously, this one's covered with lattice. It says as much. And he fell through that. And he becomes gravely injured. It's pretty bad. And he's laid up pretty bad. So what does he do? He decides that he's going to send some messengers to inquire at the city of Ekron, which, if memory serves me correctly, that is a city of the Philistines, not a city in Israel. And it's a foreign country, foreign land, foreign God. Now, he's wanting to know, am I going to make it or not? That's what he wants to find out. Why did he fall? Or sorry, how did he fall and why did he fall? We don't know how he fell, right? Don't know if he tripped, stumbled, fell through the lattice, and boom, if he landed onto a lower platform, or if he just had a bad hit on the conch on the head, something's not been right, maybe something went through him. Don't know exactly all the details, but the guy fell through the lattice, and he got really bad hurt. And how he fell is less important compared to why he fell. This is a wicked king. He's not walking in the ways of God. He's not leading the people that should be God's people in the ways of God. And so this is going to be a catalyst for judgment to come upon him. All right? Now, it could have been an opportunity for him to turn to God, but instead of turning to God, he turned to a false god. He turned to Beelzebub. Now, we'll talk about that here in a moment. But I've got a little note there that there is a reality that there is no person that is exempt from death. Okay? And I put in there a little note because even just this week I did read a headline of how a former Miss Universe contestant from Russia died after an elk crashed through the windshield of her car as her and her husband were driving down the road in their Porsche. Right? Now you think about that. She's 30 years old, seemingly at kind of the, she's competed in Miss Universe. She's driving in her Porsche, or Porsche. I don't know how you say it accurately. To me, it doesn't matter. It's still a fancy car. Driving down the road, and an elk crashes through the windshield. And then later, she succumbs to her injuries. We never know what is around the bend. We never know when an elk may pop out in the road, so to speak. We never know when we may crash through a lattice, if you will. All it takes is one thing. So there is a reality here that we don't know when our time is. We don't know even how it will happen, right? We get an idea of, well, I have a tendency, I'm 35 years old, I'm in fairly good health, not the best peak of my health, but maybe, fairly decent. The doctors don't have anything major they're worried about with me, and so that's great, but I never know if there's going to be a bus coming down the road that I don't see, right? We have to come to terms, and here's the thing. I just want to take this opportunity to kind of take a moment and say, people really need to come to terms with their mortality. Because I have encountered people at various stages in life, as far as their age goes, and they haven't really ever considered their mortality. They've, really absorbed the reality that there's a really good chance that I'm not going to make it out of this alive, right? Death's batting 1,000 right now, except on Jesus. But he still died and rose again. One day, even if I die, I'm going to rise again. But we're not going to make it there's a really good chance we're not going to make it out of this thing before he comes back. If he tarries, he's coming. Death is a reality, even for a king who is seemingly on top of the world, in his palace, in Samaria, and the king crashes through his lattice. Now, whether he fell to the lower story because maybe he didn't follow, maybe they didn't heed the Mosaic law and having a parapet wall around the top of the structure to help prevent such accidents, or not, he's gravely injured. The reality of death ought, for the Christian, be an opportunity for us to praise. You know what? Death is coming, but I'm not afraid of it. Why am I not afraid of it? Because I have already been given salvation. I've already got security in Jesus. So regardless of what befalls me in this life, whether it happens by bus, by elk, by falling off a roof, it doesn't matter if I'm secure in Christ. Because to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And so I'm at peace with my mortality because He has made me to be at peace with my mortality. But the truth is, there's a lot of people that aren't at peace with their mortality because they don't have Christ. They haven't sought after God. And here we find a man who's in the position of power as king, and he is not at peace with God. And he, on his deathbed, isn't seeking after God. You know, I know, it does make us wonder, Charlie, how can they see all these things and just not care? How can they hear the stories and not care? I mean, this is Ahab's son, right? So undoubtedly, he's heard about Mount Carmel. He knows about the situation of the drought. Undoubtedly, he's heard about how fire fell at Mount Carmel and the rains returned, and he's heard about the miraculous deliverance that God had even given his father in battle, and the many times that God evidenced himself, and yet he still won't turn. But I do think that the New Testament gives us clarity in that, because they reject God, they reject God's design, they reject everything about Him, and so God gives them up to a reprobate mind. So that their minds don't think right, their eyes don't see right, their ears don't hear right. And they're obstinate. And so what does he do? He sends messengers to Ekron to inquire of Beelzebub. Now you can roll to the next slide. And he wants to find out. So he's still not interested, he's following the same footsteps of his daddy. He's not interested in the word of the Lord. He has not learned to seek it or to heed it. He don't care. Now, one of the reasons that he may have sent the messengers to Ekron, it could be a couple of different reasons, maybe a mixture of both. One is that maybe he didn't want his people to hear how bad off his health really was. Okay, trying to keep things close to the chest so that we don't create a panic politically. Additionally, there is a well-established temple to Baal in Ekron. Okay, he's the god of that city. So this is, if you're really going to get hold of him, maybe this is the place to do it. So it might be kind of that mixture of ideas. Go there, find out what's going to happen. But God intervenes by way of Elijah. He gives Elijah supernatural knowledge. God can do that. God can make his people aware of things that they ought not be aware of. Okay? It's a fascinating concept, but I believe that is something God can do. He evidences it here. And so he intercedes now, or intervenes. With Beelzebub, I didn't mention this. Baal, that means Baal, Lord of the Flies. Maybe indicating the stuff that flies like to swarm on, okay? Maybe kind of a hint there. Some of you guys got cattle, you know what to look for in the field. So, but this is actually likely a deliberate corruption of Baal's name by the Hebrew scribes, making fun of Baal. Okay, he's a false god. He's a false deity. Most likely, it would be from other archaeological evidences and things that we have. We have Baal Zebul, which means Baal the exalted. Now, the writers of Scripture knew that Baal was not the exalted one, and so they lowered his status, and so they made, there's likely a poking fun going on, if you will, with the name of Baal. But God is going to evidence himself yet again to these people of Israel, to these people who have rejected him, and he's going to do it by way of Elijah, again calling fire down from heaven. So the messengers go out, right? And Elijah God's already given the information. He goes, he finds he crosses paths with the messengers, and he tells them, what in the world are you guys doing? Is it because there's no God in Israel that you all have to go to Ekron and find out what to do or what's going to happen? I tell you what, because the king's done this, he's not going to make it. So the messengers turn about face, and they go back to the king, and they say, hey, he's like, what are you doing back so soon, right? Why have you turned about? He didn't expect them to be there that quickly. And whenever they tell him, this is what we were told by this prophet or by this messenger, this man of God says that Yahweh says this. What do he look like? Well, he's hairy. This likely indicates the garment he's wearing, a hairy garment. This is going to put us in the mind of John the Baptist, who came in the spirit of Elijah and very similarly dressed as Elijah. And he has that leather strap, that leather belt around his waist. And this is what he told us. And so he doesn't like what he hears. So how does he respond? He sends a group after him. He sends a commander over 50, right? Many times you get those divisions in Scripture in the military. You got to have your commanders over 50s and then hundreds and then 500s, right? So that it can maybe grows. And so he sends a commander with his 50 men. And that commander comes and finds Elijah sitting on a hill. Now remember, this is the same guy, Elijah, that last time, or at least previously in his life, when he had delivered some hard news, he got scared of the response, right? And what'd he do? He run off. Elijah has learned. He did not run off. They go back to where he's supposed to be, and he's sitting on a hill. I mean, it gets pretty plain to see him from a distance at that point. He's easily found. He's not hiding. He's right there. And so the commander comes with his 50. King says, y'all, you need to calm down. If I'm a man of God, then let fire fall and consume you and your men. And it does. The king does not heed the sign. Even then, he's still not listening. He had a commander and 50 soldiers. He lost 51 men because of this. He sends another 50 with another commander. And he even comes with maybe a little bit more urgent message. The king says to come down quickly. It's time for you to get down and get down now. You know what I'm talking about? I can almost hear that tone because I take that tone from time to time. You know what I mean? My kids are like little monkeys. They climb everything, and they jump off of one thing onto another thing all the time. And I'm going, down. They're like, but I did. And Abram is really bad about it. He'll say, one more time. No more times. I said down now. No. And then jumps, right? And then we got to deal with a whole nother mess. So I know that I can almost hear that tone. He said to come down quickly, Elijah. If I'm a man of God, let fire fall and consume you and your 50. And it falls. 102 men gone like that. Now, I think the king knew what had happened. Why do I say that? Because of the third commander. When he shows up, he don't say nothing about getting off the hill, right? He's like, look, I know the last two guys with their groups, they done been burnt. How did he know? The news had traveled, okay? I'm sure the king was well aware of what had happened, and he still didn't listen. Sometimes it's not about, sometimes it's as important to realize what isn't said as what is said, right? By him saying, this is what I know, undoubtedly the king, even though it doesn't explicitly say the king understood what happened, I think it's a fair implication. I don't know. It doesn't tell us that. Maybe, depending on that and the distance. So this is going on, and he just begs for his life and the life of his men. Let our lives be precious in your sight. Please. He recognizes him as a man of God. He submits to him, if you will. I pray thee, let my life and the life of these 50 thy servants be precious in your sight. We already know fire came down and consumed the others. We don't want that to happen to us. And the angel of the Lord speaks to Elijah and tells him, you should go down. You don't have anything to be afraid of. And so this group, this commander and this group of 50, they are spared. They're shown mercy. You can roll to the next slide. Now, we already discussed the why send to Ekron question. But one thing I wanted to ask is, why did God tell Elijah that he didn't have anything to fear from that last commander of 50? So by telling him, I guess let me kind of rephrase it, restructure it. When this man showed up with his group of 50 soldiers, God said, you can go with him, you don't have to be afraid of anything. Does that make you be curious about maybe the other two groups? Right. 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 And that's what I think is being pointed at, is that there was, this is going to kind of tie into, is the next question of, was the judgment too harsh on the first two groups of soldiers? But I think that what's being implied by there's nothing to fear with this guy and his 50 is that they're not going to try to kill you on the way. They're not going to take you out. You'll get where you need to go. Whereas with the other two, I don't think that was so much a guarantee. Now, we can wonder about the harshity of this judgment. It seems a little crazy, right? This guy, this soldier shows up, and he's following orders of the king, and he says, look, king says, get down. And he addresses him, O man of God. The king says, come down. If I'm a man of God, let fire fall. Next guy, O man of God. The king says, come down quickly. If I'm a man of God, let fire fall. Here's the thing. Whether or not you're going to follow God is a matter of life and death. That's the message of the gospel. If you want life, you have to follow the Lord. If you don't, there will be death, right? So does this seem a little harsh sometimes to our modern culture and our Western mindset? It does seem harsh. But these were most likely, I believe, individuals who had ill will towards the prophet of God. They didn't come humbly as the third man. I believe that he recognized at the very least, man, there's something about this dude that we need to not mess with. We're going to be humble before him. We'll submit to that. I'm not going to risk my life and the life of my men. This guy's already proved himself as having God's support here, and so I'm not going to get involved there. But those other two, there was no fear, there was no respect, there was nothing with regard to God or his servant. And this is a well-established prophet of God. Again, this is Elijah, Mount Carmel. This is Elijah, drought. This is Elijah, rain coming. The ministry of Elijah had been circulating for years. And so it would seem that, sometimes we may think that this was a really harsh thing to do, but whenever we look at it in context of who these people were, the evidence of what their actions evidence about the king and about where their loyalties lied and where their hearts laid, then we see that, man, this is a serious thing. If you're going to follow God, it is a matter of life and death. And people need to understand that. Because the same is true today. Following the Lord is a matter of life and death. It is that serious. There's a reason that whenever we speak to youth, there's a reason when evangelists preach, they'll tell you, this is the most important decision you will ever make. Following Jesus is more important than where you're going to go to college. Following Jesus is more important than what your job here on earth is. Following Jesus and whether or not you're going to do so is more important than the house you're going to live in, the car you're going to drive, or even the person you're going to marry. Following Jesus is the most important choice you will ever make. And so whenever the gospel convicts and people have to make a choice and they have to bear the responsibility of that decision, they need to understand it's a matter of life and death. There's a reason we take it seriously, or there's a reason we should take it seriously. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in a lot of churches across America and across this world who don't take it seriously. God evidences just how serious He treats this. These kinds of events, these kinds of things, they show us look, I'm going to give you opportunities, I'm going to give you chances, I'm going to extend grace, I'm going to extend mercy, but there is going to come a time where that's going to end. And you may have years to mull it over, or you may have a week or a day. But this is a serious decision that you have to make. And it's not just for the 30 and above, or the 40 and above, and 50 and above to take seriously. It's for every follower of Christ to take seriously, so that our young ones understand just how important following Jesus is. So that our youth understand just how important following Jesus is. Because whenever we get them in that understanding, especially whenever they accept Christ and they start to understand, hey, this is a really big thing, this is very important, then they're trained with that mindset and they're learning that heart set of, man, this needs to be serious in my life. So many times I encounter people who don't take salvation seriously, even if they claim they have it. They're too preoccupied with everything else in this world. Some of them have even admitted as much. I've got goals, I've got check boxes, I've got things I've been wanting to get, I've got things I've been wanting to do. I've done all that, and now, I still just kind of feel empty. You might want to check your relationship with Christ. You said at the beginning you believe in Jesus, but where do you really stand now? Because that's the most important decision you're going to make. More important than the land you buy or the car you drive or the house you've built or any other goals you've accomplished. It's more important than any of that. I think we're confronted with that reality in this first chapter. And I think whenever we look at the Old Testament, we have a tendency to separate the God of the Old Testament and Jesus of the New. But the reality is they're the same. They are. How many times was God gracious, or really merciful, I should say? How many times was God merciful towards Ahab, Ahaziah's father? How many opportunities did he give him to quit worshiping Baal and Asherim and walking in the ways of the sins of Jeroboam, to get rid of all that and to pursue him? How many times did he let him know that I'm the real God? These are all false deities. These are idols. These are rocks. These are wood. These are whatever, but they're not me. Ahaziah grew up in all that. He was never interested. He was more concerned about what he wanted, the way that he wanted it, and the way that his mother and father had led him down. Remember, this is Jezebel's boy. I'm going to be honest. There's a whole lot of sons of Jezebel walking around. There's a whole lot of Ahab's kids running amok. So we have to be focused. We have to be dedicated, and we have to remember just what is going on. Maybe there's questions or comments about what we've discussed here thus far. His intercession, you could say. His intercession, you could say that, I think, would be a fair statement. I don't know that all 50 of his men were on the same, they didn't rebel against him, let me put it that way. And nobody said, just take him, he's on the hill. Nobody just charged forward and said, you're crazy, the king's going to kill us if we don't do, and what are you doing? Nobody did that as far as what's recorded. And they're spared. So it would maybe, at least speak to their humility and respect towards their commander. And as far as their faithfulness unto God afterward, nothing says. So I don't know if they went home and worshiped Baal after this. Maybe they did. Some of them, at least, maybe they didn't. I have no idea. That's what seems to be evidence, that these groups, at the very least, it seems. Now, I can't speak to the hearts of all, 153 men. I can't speak to every single one of their hearts. That's a God thing, not a Gabe thing. But it would seem that judgment fell on the first 102, and God is righteous in everything he does. It's extremely important what you do as a leader and how you lead your people. As a follower, it is very important who you follow, because ultimately, these are servants of Ahaziah. That's got to be recognized too. How many of these 51 guys we may see in heaven, I don't know. But at least somebody had enough wherewithal to say, we should probably not do it like the previous two groups, because they have been judged. And Elijah, who is a prophet of Yahweh, has evidence that Yahweh supports him, and he has evidence that he is faithful to Yahweh, and Yahweh is going to evidence himself. And so we don't need to go in like they did. And maybe that was a pre-mission brief they had. I don't know. He may have prepped his guys on the way. Listen, I'm going to go here and seek mercy, because the last two groups, they all got burned. I don't want that for y'all. He obviously cared about his men.
Somebody out there to come tell him, oh, you're going to be all right.
Ahaziah, yeah, okay.
I mean, I've actually seen this happen in my lifetime with people that's not ready to go.
Hmm.
They get down there and they go to grab it at everything they can.
Yeah.
To find somebody or something, some doctor somewhere, tell me I'm going to be all right. Tell me this cancer's not going to get me. Have we not
And that
saw
may be. I know that there are people, at least at the very end, who want somebody to come in and make them feel as good as possible without them ever having to submit to God. I was a good person. My name's on the church roll. They can never say they accepted Jesus. They won't say confidently that they're a follower of Christ, but I was a member. I was this. I did that. I gave here. That's.
And you can
Oh,
carry
that's
this
good.
on- You can carry this on to the family a lot of times. Families do that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we got to find a preacher to preach a sermon here at
Yeah.
my father or whoever. Let's find the guy that will say something that
Yeah.
pleases us, that gives us some hope here.
And that may be what Ahaziah was looking for. I don't know if he was looking for a false hope from some messenger or some, quote unquote prophet of Baal. I just know that at the very least the evidence shows that he was not caring at all what God had to say. And then when he heard what God had to say, he didn't like what God had to say, and so he sent guys after him. After Elijah, sorry.
Yeah, but think of all the collateral damage that's done here. Here's, like you say, 150 people's already died on because of this. What's going on here?
Well, previously 400 prophets of Baal were executed at Mount Carmel because, Elijah commanded the people. We're going to judge. They're false prophets. And so they were executed on Carmel. I mean, essentially this kingdom has, under the ministry of Elijah, there's been, upwards of 500 people that have lost their lives because of the false deity that they follow. They didn't have a clue. But Ahaziah dies. Elijah goes and Elijah tells him, Elijah goes with the captain, goes with the 50, and he tells him, you're not going to make it. You are going to die. You didn't turn to the God that really is in Israel. As much power as God exercised through Elijah, how much more could have been done for Christ? Yeah, that's a great thought, Kenny. Yeah, he did. Ain't that amazing? And so and that's kind of, God evidenced the weight of following him or not following him in the severity of judgment, right? I mean, he does this. And we see that in the things that occur in various events in the Old Testament. But that in no way is taken away from, in fact, I'd say it's magnified in the New Testament with that reality too. That the weight of following God, the response, the importance, the severity of that choice of following God is even more so demonstrated through Christ coming and dying on the cross. These people suffered judgment. How much more did Christ take upon himself? He who knew no sin become sin. He didn't deserve to die, but he stayed on the cross. He didn't revile. He didn't rebuke. He didn't say a word against these people. He stood silent as a lamb before the slaughter. He stayed on the cross. He took the beatings, the humiliation. I mean, when I talk about Jesus' humiliation, he was naked when he was crucified. I know what paintings show, but that's paintings. The history of crucifixion would depict him, would teach us that he was stripped naked, publicly humiliated before his mother, before everybody else, before people that he tried to minister to. I wonder how many people he had healed that saw him like that. How many people did he go to and say, "Your faith has made you whole"? And then they've walked out of that room when they were paralyzed. They've ran down a path that they've never seen in 40 years because they've been blind their whole life. And now they're able to see it for the first time. And that one who did that for them is on the cross right in front of them in that state. It's extremely important. So much so that Jesus came and died. But he rose again. See, that's the thing. The suffering of Christ is unimaginable. We cannot grasp what Jesus went through. I hope that we understand that we will never be able to understand it. There was a shaking in the Trinity that I can't understand or fathom. As he took the wrath that we deserve. That's huge. But just as massive of that endurance that he had and what he went through there is a massive victory in the empty grave. It couldn't stick. He paid the price, but there's no claim on him because of his righteousness. And his righteousness is so great that it can be accounted to all of us if we follow him. So that whenever we stand before God, we don't have to stand before him defiled. We don't have to stand before him impure. We don't have to stand before him wrinkled. We don't have to stand before him with spot. Instead, we stand before him washed, clean, purified, and spotless because of Jesus. That's amazing. And we are victorious because of Jesus. I'm not afraid of the 6-foot hole. Me and Shay have talked about this. Both of our jobs, both of our vocations, we are confronted by death all the time. And it's not that we've grown cold, but it's just that this is a reality for life. And it is sad and it is hard, and we don't try to minimize that. But we are at peace, not because we've dealt with it every day, but because Jesus dealt with it for us. That's comforting. The concerns I have are, what if it happens and maybe I forgot to give her that password to that account? You know what I mean? Or, to whatever this is, or whatever. What if I didn't get her all the information she needed and I make it tough on her? She'll figure it out. She's smarter than I am anyways. But I'm not worried about me. That's pretty amazing. I don't have to fear death. Just can't help but want the best for my loved ones. Now, there's something that we need to look at here. Okay, so this is our last discussion question. And this isn't really a deep theological thing here. It's just kind of a doozy to think about and hopefully get straightened out. So he died, verse 17. Ahaziah, he died. According to the word of the Lord, which Elijah had spoken. He didn't get up from that bed. He did not overcome the injuries he had sustained, and so he died. And Jehoram reigned in his stead in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, because he had no son. So Jehoram is another son of Ahab. And it says here that he began to reign in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat. Because Jehoshaphat has a boy named Jehoram. And they're going to seem to rule at the same time. But let's go over to 3:1. We're going to save the Elijah getting caught up on the chariot of fire. That's a pretty awesome account, so we're going to save that. We're going to dedicate a week. Yeah, they're both named Jehoram. You can also call him Joram. That would be another alternate, like Joram. And so if you've got a Warren Wiersbe commentary, he just does that. He says that, and he makes it clear, like, I'm going to do this, and we're going to call one Joram and one Jehoram so that we can distinguish between the two. But that's just for the sake, and he makes it clear it's just for the sake of conversation there. But 3:1. Now Jehoram, the son of Ahab, began to reign over Israel and Samaria the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and reigned 12 years. Jehoram began to reign over Israel and Samaria in the 18th year of who? 3:1. Did anybody turn there? Who? Jehoshaphat. But so he died according to the word of the Lord which Elijah had spoken, and Jehoram reigned in his stead in the 2nd year of Jehoram. So in 1:17 it says Jehoram began to reign in the 2nd year of Jehoram, and in 3:1 it says that Jehoram began to reign in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat. Does that make anybody's ears go, wait a second? I thought you guys said the Bible doesn't confuse us. Right? Does anybody have an idea of how these could be in harmony? You're not allowed to say it. John's here tonight. Michael? Ah, dude, yes! Co-regency. I was hoping somebody would remember. A dual reigning, a co-regency, okay? When one king begins to get some age on him and realizes, I'm probably not going to make it. I don't know how long I got, but I'm obviously not a spring chicken. He may go ahead and name his successor, and that successor, who is Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, will begin to be a co-regent with them and reign alongside them. It allows them the opportunity to reign and to get training and be in that transition of power. And so that is how it's easily understood. This is a co-regency situation where Jehoshaphat has Jehoram at his side. And that aligns with what we discussed in Jehoshaphat's life. Because what did he do? When Jehoshaphat was getting close to the end of his years, he named his eldest Jehoram his successor as the next king over Judah. He also took Jehoram's brothers and he put them over fortified cities and he gave them wealth, right? We talked about the wisdom in that. Like, hey, there's not a need for rivalry, boys. I've given each of you a position of authority. Yes, your oldest brother is going to be king, but I'm not leaving you without anything, and I'm going to give you wealth so that you have what you need in order to administrate over these cities that I'm putting you or giving to you. Jehoram, after Jehoshaphat dies, and he's got everything kind of secured, we discussed what he did. He goes and kills all of his brothers. Now, we discussed also how Jehoram was married to Athaliah, who is the daughter of Ahab. Somebody said it. Yep. Alan, you got it? Yep. Ahab. Ahab's girl. His little princess. Boy, she's a piece of work. Not going to lie. You don't want a Jezebel. You don't want an Athaliah either. You read about her. That chick was bad. Okay? In a bad way. So, co-regency. As we study, as you read, you run into things like that. Oh, hey, this doesn't have to be at odds. This doesn't have to be a contradiction. There is a historically accurate way of understanding these passages, and it's easily understood. And we already discussed co-regencies at the beginning of all this, that it's hard to determine exactly It gets, we like precise dates that, so-and-so began to reign on March 2nd of 1833 at 3:02 p.m., right? We want that kind of all the way down to the minute. The ancient cultures and even other cultures today, they're less concerned about that type of precision. And it's difficult to figure out exactly maybe when somebody started to reign, how they how they counted those years of reigning. If you took the throne in the middle of a year, they may not count that as being your first year. You may reign for 6 months, and then they'll say the first full year that you begin is your first year as reigning king. That may be how they record it in history, depending on the culture and the place. So because of those kinds of discrepancies, it gets a little weird sometimes. But it's okay. So I just wanted to point that out because when we get to 3:1, some of you may say, wait a tick, didn't you say Jehoram began to reign with Jehoram? But now it's saying Jehoshaphat, right? So it's just a little exercise in Bible study. That's all. All right. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? I appreciate the discussion. I really do. All right. If not, then let's dismiss in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you, and Lord, we want to thank you. We want to praise you because you have been pressing upon humanity the severity of the decisions that we make, the reality that following you is a matter of life and death, so much so that even your Son came to die and rise again so that we, if we